Good evening, everybody. Oh, is that too loud? I'll hold it back a ways. We want to make sure that you hear everybody. Turn to your neighbor and say, "Welcome to Lakewood." Good job. Good job. Well, it's really nice to be here tonight. We're going to just do a brief meeting here with our own crew, and then we're going to turn it over to Mary Kay. And we have some other speakers tonight too, and we'll announce those as we get to it. We're going to turn it over to Mary Kay Weber right now, and she's going to tell you about the rest of the story.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for trekking out here. I'm sure many of you have not been out in Lakewood for a long, long time, and we're hoping that when you come here today, you'll look around and say, hey, this looks pretty nice, because I think the history back here has been up and down over the years, and so I think Lakewood has turned the corner and is heading in a new direction, and we hope that you are a part of Lakewood. And we've got such a great history here. My history is that I am originally from Chicago. I am not a Lakewood person. My grandparents bought here in 1912. They were the property owners. We got our 4 little lots, I guess, and they gave their $20-some or whatever, and we happened to live on the lake around the bend. And we grew up in this little tiny cottage. My grandparents held on to it during the Depression, and most of the people lost their homes during the Depression. And my grandparents were able to hold on to their property, and so my dad, of course, used to come up here. He loved it here, and during the war, and my mother used to come up here because she was a bacteriologist in Chicago, and she had to go up to the Gerber plants. And she did studies out in the farm fields. So she used to come up here during the summertime, and even in the 40s at that point, the lake was still viable. She would go swimming and what have you, and the women's club was still active in the 40s. The demise of Lakewood, we had a very short history here. It was really flourishing from about 1915 to probably about 1930 or 32. So it had a very short history. But it was a thriving community, and hopefully you'll take a look. I've got 2 brochures that you're all entitled to have tonight. We made them up special for you, so you have copies. It's our walking tour of historic Lakewood, and then also a brief history of Lakewood. And we want each of you to have those this evening. And it gives you some idea of a little bit of what was going on. And this was really the crux of the great area that people would come to. It's right in this area. People would come in via the railroad. We had a special railroad that came in across. It was near those buildings up there, and it brought people in. We had a platform, and people came in from Chicago, and as many as 2,000 people were here every summer. And over where the ball field is now is where the Cottage City was. And people would come here and either rent a cottage for $10 a week or whatever, or they could actually stay here and look for property. And there was a cafeteria, there were hotels, bowling alleys, dance halls. I mean, it was a very thriving social community. And it was, Lakewood Club, probably there were dues and stuff, so it was actually a fairly private club. It was, people would join the association. So it was quite cool. And fishing was great. I have pictures that I put a little book together on my family, and my dad's there with his stringer of bass that was huge. So it was a great fishing lake. It was a great boating lake. My dad used to swim the lake every single day. He'd swim across the lake and back when he was a young man. So anyhow, I had 3 brothers, and we came up here every summer. Excuse me. My oldest brother died. When we used to just love it up here, and so when my husband and I got married, we started coming up here in the same cottage. I mean, it was a garage. It was really a garage. We had an outdoor toilet. We had cold water. We had an outdoor pump. My mother had an old-fashioned washing machine with the ringers on it. I mean, this is what we grew up with. This was in the 50s, so. Anyhow, we kept into that cottage until my dad passed away. And then my mom said she didn't want to come up anymore. It was too much work. And at that point, my husband and I, we've been married probably 20 years at that point. We asked if we would, could put up a year-round home. And that's what we did in 1994. So we're on the same property as the original cottage. And we retired up here 5 years ago. So, Hickson. Yeah, a lot, again, I don't know too many of the people from Lakewood because I just hung around with, my mom kept a short leash on us. And so, we swam every day, not necessarily in this lake. We would go over to West Lake or, over to Twin Lake or to Duck Lake. Those are our Big Blue. Those were our places that we swam and stuff. But, we just came up here. The day school was out. We were here. We went back the day school began. Before it began, we lived our summers here. So we got to meet a lot of nice people, and we've been enjoying ourselves. So since we moved up here, it was kind of like, what do I do? And so when all of a sudden it dawned on me that the centennial was rolling around, I kind of said, well, maybe this is something I can take on by myself and with other people in the community and put some kind of a celebration together. And that's what we have done. And so we've had our open house in early May, and I think Roger was here, and that was quite successful, and we really were able to get all of this promotional material, which had been accumulated a few years ago, because I think you guys came out here a number of years ago, did you not? Didn't the Historical Society come out here a few years ago, and they did a presentation at the Village Hall? And so fortunately a lot of material was had been accumulated, so we were able to put together all of these great brochures and what have you. And then Elizabeth and Randy Lemoyne, who are back there, Elizabeth is a Crawford, and they are long-term people here, right? Elizabeth is anyhow. She's lived here all of her life. Her parents were here, so she is a true Lakewood girl, a true Lakewood girl. And they helped tremendously. They would put together these brochures. They were just a godsend to get all of this together. So the next thing we have is on the 30th, we have our big celebration that ties into our 4th of July. We invite you out here. There's going to be a giant parade. We have activities all day long. There is, hopefully the Beacon will be running a schedule. It should be on our website, but I also have some over there that you can pick up and take a look at. So come out for the parade. We have the Scottsville Clown Band coming in. For those of you who might enjoy that, we have pony rides, we have kids games, we have a free ice cream social, we'll have food out here. They have terrific fireworks if you've never been out here for our fireworks. And we stay away from Whitehall and Whitehall's fireworks, so it's on the 30th. So, we certainly welcome you to come out and spend the day with us to continue our celebration. And then we have a Centennial Garden Walk on July 21st. So that's something new, right? We have a garden club here. So we're having a garden walk, and we have 10 beautiful gardens that will be on display, and people can wander around. And basically everything is pretty much free. So we invite you to come back. Is there anything, what else do you need to know? Yes?
What's the rough difference between the winter and the summer population?
I think there are very few people that spend their summers here anymore. I think there's only a handful of people that come up and just are here for the summer. We have I can think of maybe 5 or 6, Elizabeth, would you think so? 5, 6, maybe 10 families that spend their summers up here that are not year-round. It's not many. Well, this really is a year-round community for the most part. I mean, I think the people that live here now are primarily people that did not come from this area, that have moved in, and young families, and there's quite a few new buildings throughout the village. There's a number of older buildings that have been restored. There's only a handful of original buildings that have not been touched, that are still left. All of the buildings, of course, from this area are long gone. And I don't remember seeing any of those. The clubhouse, they were mostly destroyed in the 30s when not only was they not being taken care of, but I guess there were some very, very severe winters with a lot of snow, and a lot of the buildings were destroyed at that time. Yeah, they were in. So, Elizabeth, do you remember any buildings? Any of you remember any buildings?
The Women's Club.
The Women's Club, and that still exists. That's on Kenwood, and it's a private home now. And of course, the hotels.
Schools in Whitehall.
That's right. There's the school. The original school is in Whitehall now, near the bus station, or right where the buses are, and that was the original school out here. So, but we had a great history, and and we're having a great time enjoying our centennial. So thank you for being a part of this. Do you have if you have any historical questions, Elizabeth would probably be far suited to answer those questions than I would. Yes.
So the original lots were 25 by 100.
Approximately, yes.
So you had to have at least 2.
Well, I believe you had to have 4.
Yep.
I believe you had to have 4 for a building site, because that's what we had, were 4.
Yep.
we then, since then, you can't really build on 4 anymore. I think you need to have at least 7 or 8 lots now to build. So I think, you know, when we changed over, we ended up buying all the property around us so that we had enough land to build a bigger house on.
And they were marketed in Chicago?
Definitely marketed in Chicago, and there's, yeah, and Roger said he'd get into it, and he's so much more glib than I am. So, yes, and there's actually information here in these booklets. They have the actual records of what they were soliciting and what have you. It was through the Chicago Evening Post, which is a now defunct newspaper. And I think, in my mind, we had Boy Scout Camp Ossipee, which was bought in 1911. And, you know, of course, it was over in the Crystal Lake area, so people were literally coming right through this area to get to Ossipee. My guess is some of the people who owned the land just thought this was a real opportunity to sell to the Chicago people who might be coming up here, you know, to bring their kids up to the Boy Scout camps and what have you. So the property was handled, I believe, by the Mayo brothers owned the land, and then they set up some kind of a deal with the Post, and yeah, you got it through the Post. And then they had, you know, the taxes were like $2 a year or something along that line, you know, so.
Can we go back to that?
Yeah, we all wish we could. And I think there are 400 cottages that were actually built.
Couple of questions. A while ago, I came across a picture of Lakewood Club showing a bunch of tents in the road.
Yes.
I got the idea that customers would come in and tent for a few days and pick out a lot and go home.
Yeah, is exactly
Where
correct.
was that?
That's actually right where the ball field is.
Oh.
If you look at where the ball field is over here, and you can see that on that diagram here, we have several big diagrams, and it shows the tent city.
In 1915, we have a picture where you can see a lot of tents over
Yeah,
where the
I
ballpark
think
is.
I have that same picture.
By the time you get to about the 1920s, they took those out and put little small buildings, like that would hold a table
So at least it's
and
on
a
a
bed, okay?
They're moving up.
Called Cottage City, and you can still see them. There is a man who owns his house right here, the tan one. On his property, he has one of those.
And he's actually been restoring it.
And they were for people who didn't own a cottage,
So we just
or
wanted
a
to rent.
company who came up and wanted to, have a place for themselves.
And I think some people actually just rented them, you know, for a week, and it was, you know, got to stay here, and there was a cafeteria and what have you. There were several hotels. There was actually a hotel, the Emerson Hotel was right over on this corner, and then there was just one hotel that still exists here. It's actually down Kenwood, close to Russell Road, and it was the old Birchwood, and that's a private home now, but it actually looks exactly like it. Elizabeth, are there any others? We just had one torn down last year. Yeah, the Ashland is gone. So, but we still actually have one here that was a private home.
Thanks for coming tonight. Anyway, my first encounter with Lakewood Club was like I'm probably in the 6th or 7th grade, and my dad is a surveyor, registered land surveyor, and so I was working with him on a survey crew, and we're out here, and I'll say we're at the corner of like Michigan Avenue and Clark Street or something like that, and so I turned to my father and I say, so you know, where's the street? And he said, you're standing in it, and like that was my first introduction to a paper street. And obviously we know Lakewood is filled with paper streets. And so we go on from there kind of thing. Actually, if I don't know if there's people here from Lakewood, but if you ever looked at a survey map, it may be signed by Edward Sharmer in that case. He sort of got around and signed all these different survey maps. And I think one of the things that somehow, you know, you're raised instantly by your parents, but then all of a sudden things just kind of happen. And like, you know, Dad knew everyone because basically, I mean, anyone who bought a lot at Lakewood at one time or another wanted to find it. And so what do? You know, the first thing you do is you call the surveyor. And so that usually ended up being Ed Sharmer. And so all of a sudden you're standing out there in the middle of the, you know, the woods and, you know, where's Michigan Avenue? And so kind of an interesting evolution. And then also, as a result of that, he always knew somebody down at the end of the road, whether it's a private road or whatever it is. And so you just go down there and there'd be somebody at the end of the road and they'd say, oh yeah, how are you? And then, you know, all the kind of the stories you get. Anyway, there's a lot of information. There's